Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video where in today's video we're going to be looking ahead to the Double Gameweek 32. There's a lot going on. There's a couple of teams doubling. Let's get straight into it and talk about what we're doing for our teams.
Okay, then, yeah, so getting into my team first of all, coming off the back of a nice green arrow last week, about 100k ish, up to 300k in the world. So good progress. Obviously, Jacob Murphy carried, I think, me and Ben last week with that huge haul, which was nice. I went with Captain Isak in the end. Obviously, didn't pay off compared to Salah, but definitely worth the risk considering obviously Salah blanked away at Fulham. Going into this week, then I've got two free transfers. Obviously, Gabriel is injured and out for the season, so he's an issue that I'm going to have to sort out eventually. But in defence at the moment, we've got Edison in goal with Palace at home. Obviously, does contradict with the triple Palace that I have in my team, but I'm not going to play Areola against Liverpool, so it's a fairly straightforward one there. Currently got Timber starting, Brentford at home. I just don't think the minutes will be there again this week. So there is consideration to go double City defence against my double Palace attack. It just sounds awful, but there is also consideration for me to take out Gabriel and bring in an Aston Villa defender. The problem doing that is obviously Aston Villa have a lot of rotation too, so not sure which one to go for at the present time. Obviously, we even saw Ezri Konsa, who is usually undroppable, get rotated last week. So yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum. I am also tempted by the likes of maybe a Conor Bradley if he is fit enough to start, due to obviously Liverpool having that Leicester fixture in Game Week 34. So it's still a good fixture despite not being a double. So there's a few options to go. I highly doubt I will have Timber starting come the deadline. I do think it will be a transfer for Gabriel, and then whoever comes in does play in defence. Obviously, I could go with someone like Kiwior. I think his minutes would probably be a little bit safer just due to the lack of centre-back options at the moment. But yeah, undecided as it stands at Thursday evening. Dan Burn is up next, obviously, with the double game week fixtures of United at home, Palace at home. United are terrible going forwards, really lacking the goal threat. Obviously, no goals against Forest, no goals against City. So yeah, not too bothered about playing him there. Palace, it's just one of those games that we'll see what we get from him. Daniel Munoz obviously got the goal last week, which was great. Away fixtures for City and Newcastle, obviously not really hoping for a clean sheet. Well, love a clean sheet in both, but don't expect a clean sheet in both. Hoping for more so the attack and returns with him as well. What's the thoughts on defence, Ben, and where would you go with that sort of defensive transfer?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a case that with the defensive transfer, you're sort of in a position now where you've held Gabriel a week on the bench. So I'd say almost keep him another week, just to give you sort of that element of flexibility going into next week, which is likely going to be the week that you're going to need more of your squad players to be actually playing. So I think there's going to be less rotation in 33 compared to 32. I agree with you. I don't think the minutes are secure there for Timber, just given the Champions League turnaround, etc. But yeah, other than that, it's fairly strong in terms of a defence, and it's got the right doublers and sort of fairly template in there too.
Yeah, and then moving on to the midfield, then we've also got Morgan Rogers up first. Obviously, it's up for debate in the FPL community at the moment who will start in that Villa attack at the moment. A lot of people seem to think that Watkins, Asensio, and Marlon will play due to them not starting against PSG. Obviously, those three also did start at the weekend last week against Nottingham Forest. So there is obviously proof to that. The player who started with them was Morgan Rogers, and this guy plays almost week in, week out. No matter when people think he gets rested, he usually does start. So for me personally, I have quite high belief that he will play this game against Southampton. I know obviously people said that Jacob Ramsey's come off early, but Jacob Ramsey usually comes off around 60 minutes, and to be honest, I don't think he affected the game. Obviously, PSG were 2-1 up at the time. They needed to change something. So I do think Morgan Rogers does start, and that is why I've got him starting ahead of Bukayo Saka at the moment. Again, similar sort of thinking with Timber. I don't expect, well, even if Saka does start, I do not expect him to get more than 60 minutes. I think, with that Real Madrid second leg coming up, they're going to want to make sure they get through to the semis. Saka's a big part of that, and they're not going to risk him in an almost meaningless game in the Premier League for Arsenal because they have top four. They probably have second pretty well secure at the moment as well. So, yeah, I don't see why Arteta would risk these players against Brentford. Eze's up next, City away, Newcastle away, absolutely buzzing after his 2 assists last weekend. Obviously outscoring Sarr, which is fantastic for me. Obviously, I think Eze's a little bit more differential, which is great. Again, just hoping for some attack and returns this week in that double game week. An outsider for the captaincy if you're sort of wanting to go there. Jacob Murphy, obviously already touched on him with that 16-pointer last week. Fantastic returns. Hoping for more of the same. Obviously, Gordon's fitness is not looking too great at the time of recording. So if you are looking for a Newcastle midfielder, I think Jacob Murphy is by far the safest bet, and obviously only cost £5 million. And then Mo Salah rounds off the team. No vice or captaincy on him this week due to the doubles. West Ham at home. I'm just hoping that Liverpool can look a little bit better going forwards, because I do feel like their performances since the PSG knockout have really dropped off, and they haven't looked as good as what they have been prior to those Champions League games. So yeah, that's the midfield. Ben, what's the thoughts on that sort of Rodgers-Saka conundrum?
Yeah, so it's a conundrum that I've got myself as well, just given that our wildcards were fairly similar. I'm in the same camp as you at the moment. I think it's more likely that Rodgers plays, just given that he seems to be the player that doesn't get rotated out in that Aston Villa attack regardless. And Villa do still have, points to play for in the Premier League. So
Yeah.
for me, it's safer to start Rodgers than Saka at this given moment in time. I do really like the Eze pick, very much differential. Of course, he's always been sort of that player at Palace that's had the potential to be a great FPR set, just hasn't shown the consistency over a long period of game week. So hopefully you can sort of build that together. And then Murphy, of course, with the lovely goal last week, and like the brace we can't complain about either. So yeah, all fairly strong, and yeah, like I said, I don't think this week will be the week to captain Salah.
Yeah, and then moving on to that forward line, then it's pretty much the same as everyone else's forward line. Mateta's on the vice captaincy with that City away, Newcastle away fixtures. Don't mind if you wanted to go for him, to be honest. I do see Palace scoring in both games. And then Isak on the triple captaincy, it will be for this week. I've activated it at the time of recording. The only way that I won't triple captain Isak this week is if I hear any sort of murmurings around his fitness, because obviously that does seem to creep up pretty frequently with Alexander Isak. But yeah, more than happy to go with him. Didn't really get the chances against Leicester last week, to be honest. The goals in the game was pretty much over by the 11th minute, so there was no real need for Newcastle to go for it. So hoping that sort of changes. 2 games at St James's Park as well. If you offered me that a couple of weeks ago, I'd have snapped your hand off. So happy to go with him with the triple captaincy. And then obviously Marmoush rounds off the team with Palace at home, potentially on penalties as well for City, given the fact that there's no Erling Haaland as well. So what's the thoughts on the triple captaincy, Ben?
Yeah, I think the triple captaincy is a sensible pick and a sensible play to go with this week. I think Isak is probably the best option in terms of the doubles that we've got coming up, in terms of consistency of minutes and the points output potential. Of course, a triple captaincy on a midfielder that's got a similar scoring rate would be ideal, but I don't think at this point in the season we're going to have that luxury. So we're going to have to, as FPL managers, pick and choose. It's going to be between Isak, Marmoush, and probably Chris Wood in terms of the doubles that we've got to play. So I think playing it now is probably the easiest play to make. So I have no issues with that. In terms of the other 2 strikers, yeah, fairly template as well, and both I can see getting returns this week too. Okay, so moving on into my team, and we also got a green arrow last week, fairly hefty one, up to 120k, so not too bad at all. Moving on in, and so we've got Raya in goal. I don't think he's going to be rotated out of that Arsenal team this week, just given that is the one position that tends not to be rotated at all. Similar to Josh, we've got Munoz and Dan Burn in the starting 11. I've opted for Gvardiol over Timber. Of course, I don't have the option of going doubling up on the Manchester City defence, so it makes sense for me to have Gvardiol with the, not really the minute security there of Timber. There is a consideration, and it's one I'm considering, to maybe bench Gvardiol for Williams, just given the clashes that I have in my team, and I can almost double down and sort of go go a bit out there in terms of my pick, which is definitely tempting and one that I am considering, just undecided on yet. Nottingham Forest defence numbers are decent, and Everton's attacking numbers not the best. So it is something that's tempting and one that I am looking at considering. That's the only change really I'd make there. There's no real thought on bringing Kappa in this week over Raya. Josh, what's the thoughts on the defence?
Yeah, I like the idea of starting Nico Williams. I think even with Carvalho, he hasn't been playing left back in recent weeks either. So the attacking threat is really limited with him anyway. So you're hoping for a clean sheet for Palace when also you're hoping for Palace to score with the attackers as well. So yeah, it does make sense to start Nico Williams ahead, and it's not as if he's playing in a crap defence or anything like that. He's playing in one of the league's best defences as well. So yeah, that makes total sense.
Moving on into the midfield, and as you can see, very similar again to Josh. As of course, you can tell we both wildcarded in the same week. I've also got Murphy, Rodgers, and Salah in my teams. Of course, I'm opting very similar to Josh to not captain Salah this week, just given that the double game week for Newcastle is that little bit better. Fairly confident, as I said, on Rodgers' minutes, and Ismail Assar, I'm hoping can sort of really sort of show the whole potential that he has done in sort of specific singular game weeks. And if he can get that again over a run of fixtures, that'd be fantastic. The underlying data suggests that he's going to get returns. It's just a case recently is he's been a little bit on the unlucky side. Josh, that's the midfield there. What's the thoughts on that? There's only the one difference there.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think Sarr is a great pick in himself as well. It's very 50-50 between him and Eze. Obviously, Eze's winning at the moment, but like you say, Sarr can return big, and I'd say has better goal threat than Richie Eze as well. So yeah, there's always the chance that by the end of this double game week, Sarr could be outscoring Eze.
Okay, so moving on into the strike force, we've got Marnoush, Mateta, and Alexander Isak as well. We've got a very similar team, which like it's not the worst thing. And when we were building our squads, we didn't sort of speak to each other in the wildcard phase, so it just shows how strong that template seems to be over these coming game weeks, and we'll see differences from game week 33, of course. But of course, these are the strongest players that we've got out there at the moment. And then, of course, as Josh has done as well, he's got Saka on the bench as well as me. Just not confident on the minutes there with him. The idea is to triple captain Alexander Isak. I haven't hit the button just yet, but fairly certain I'm going to do that prior to the deadline. Josh, what's the overall thoughts on the team?
Yeah, I just think triple captain on Isak this week just makes sense. Like we know for sure that he's definitely got the triple captaincy. Well, he's got the fixtures as well. Obviously, a few people will be keen to bench boost this week potentially, but I just think with the minutes risks of Villa and Arsenal, I couldn't go there myself in terms of potentially bench boosting a couple of 1-pointers with Timber and Saka. So yeah, I'd much rather play the triple captaincy this week and then bench boost next week when those Champions League games are done and dusted. They're going to be more focused on the Premier League, at least from an Aston Villa perspective as well. So they still have top 5 to play for. So yeah, it just makes total sense to me. Obviously, you could wait till game week 36 to see who might double later on in the season, but they are not confirmed. So yeah, for me, I'm just going to go play it now and just hope for the best later on. Okay, and as that wraps up mine and Ben's very similar but not the same team reveals for game week 32. If you did enjoy, make sure you hit that like button. Obviously, teams are very similar at this stage because there's a small amount of teams doubling, and those teams that are doubling have a small amount of assets that are good for your FPL teams. If someone like Anthony Gordon was out or was back in the team, I think, me and Ben probably be a little bit different in that regards. But especially with Newcastle, the assets are pretty similar, and everyone's going to have somewhat of a similar team come the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Josh said, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
We'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone. So